After years of shooting with digital cameras, I found myself holding something different. An old school Canon AE-1 with a 50mm lens, along with a box filled with other vintage camera gear. So, I thought it would be an interesting experience to give 35mm film photography a try. Honestly, I don't really know where to start, but hey, how hard could it be? Well, it's embarrassing to admit, but I had no idea where to even put the battery. There were some other things I needed to figure out as well. You know, the simple things like, how do I properly load a roll of film? And what film stock should I use? Inside the box were mostly rolls of Kodak 400 and Fujicolor 400, but I ended up choosing a roll of Ilford HP5+. Nothing beats the timeless look of black and white film, and it also seemed like the safer choice. I decided to take the camera out to one of my favorite locations in the Florida Everglades. I walked around a dried up swamp bed, looking for anything that caught my eye. There were a few compositions I liked, but the photo I had in my head could only be made with a wide-angle lens. I was really missing my 16-35, but I quickly learned that film photography requires a different mindset. Every crank and click needs to be intentional. It's like shooting JPEGs. Everything has to be right, straight out of the camera. I found myself taking extra time to fine-tune each composition. It wasn't about taking more photos, it was about making better ones. I kept exploring and found a few more scenes to shoot. I was really loving the experience. Even though I was taking my time and making every shot count, my first roll of 35mm film came to an end. All I had to do now was rewind the film and get it developed. After a few days of eagerly waiting, I finally got the email to download the scans. It felt like Christmas morning. I had no idea what to expect. I mean, how bad could they be? Well, guess what? They were terrible. I mean, most shots were out of focus, and the exposures were way off. After practicing with a few more rolls of film, I finally started to see improvements. I learned how to interpret what the camera's light meter was reading, and applied my own form of exposure compensation based on feeling and instinct. I also learned a cool technique called zone focusing, and ever since, I've never had an out of focus shot again. As long as I can remember, I always avoided having grain or digital noise in my photos, but the colors and organic characteristics of film started to grow on me. So I started using my Canon R5 to run a few experiments to see if I could somehow recreate the look of film on my digital photos. The experiments were simple, nothing really scientific. I used the same 50mm focal length on both cameras. I matched the ISO, f-stop, and shutter speed with slight variations. If I was using black and white film, I turned on the monochrome profile on the R5. I photographed the same scenes with both cameras so I could make a true side-by-side comparison. That was the easy part. I did my best to recreate the film look in Lightroom with some tweaks in Photoshop, but I didn't like the results. A few months back, I used the Dehancer plugin for Premiere Pro to give my videos the look of film. I'll put a link to that video up here. Just so you know, Dehancer didn't sponsor this video, but they did give me a license to test out the Photoshop version. If you want to give Dehancer a try, just visit their website to download a free trial. If you like the results, you can use the code FLWILD at checkout for 10% off. Dehancer has a long list of film stocks to choose from, along with other settings that can be tweaked to build on the presets. Again, this won't be a scientific test. I'm simply going to take the photos from the R5 and apply the same film stock I used in the AE1. I have my first raw image here in Lightroom, and I'm going to apply some adjustments that Dehancer recommends for better results. The first setting to change is the profile. Switch it to Adobe Standard. The next settings are in the Basics panel. Lower the exposure by 1 stop, reduce the contrast to -40, and increase the blacks to +60. They also recommend turning off sharpening and noise reduction. Once I've made those adjustments, I send the image to Photoshop. You can use Dehancer in Lightroom, but personally, I found the process easier in Photoshop. It's also recommended to have the photo in a sRGB color space. Now that I'm here in Photoshop, the first thing I do is duplicate the layer. Then I add the Dehancer plugin, which opens up to a simple interface where I can easily browse through the various film stocks. I scroll down until I find the Ilford HP5 profile, and with one click, I have the look of film on my digital photo. Now, I want to find out how accurate Dehancer is compared to the real film stock. I think it's pretty close. Let's see if I can adjust some of these settings to get even closer. After a few tweaks, it didn't take long to get my photo looking similar to the real Ilford HP5. It's not a perfect match. The grain is definitely more defined in the 35mm photo. I experimented with a few more photos. I really like that Dehancer saves all the edits I made from the previous image. That speeds things up. I just need to make minor tweaks. So far, Dehancer does a great job with black and white film emulations, but now I want to see how well it does with color. I decided to try a roll of Kodak Ektar 100 since I heard it's a good choice for landscape photography. After getting my scans back, I can't say I'm a fan of this film, but let's find out if Dehancer can recreate the look. I reset all the settings to start fresh, and then scrolled down to find the Kodak Ektar 100 profile. Wow, this doesn't even come close. It's definitely not a good starting point. I'm not sure if I missed something, but I don't think it should be this far off. I played around with some of the sliders to see if I could get closer, and I finally got to a point where I felt the digital photo started to resemble the Kodak Ektar 100 a lot more. The biggest struggle I had was matching the greens, but everything else was easy to match. If you have any suggestions or tips for getting richer green tones, let me know. Overall, the presets Dehancer provides are really nice, and do give digital photos a film-like aesthetic. So, am I going to give up digital photography and switch to film? No way. I've spent way too much money on my kit. This is just the beginning of my journey with 35mm film, and I'll keep learning from it. So far, I've learned to take my time, trust my instincts, and embrace imperfections. I'll end off here with a few of my favorite photographs. Try and guess which ones are actually 35mm film, and which are digital photos with Dehancer applied. Let me know your answers in the comments below. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, share it, and don't forget to subscribe to follow along as my adventures in 35mm film photography continue.